Now, following this and other incidents around the country, the Trump administration has dramatically ramped up its crackdown on illegal immigration and is also looking at those in the country on asylum, as this Afghan national suspect was. The State Department has essentially paused all refugee admissions and immigration from 19 countries of concern. It is also pushing allies to scale back on their immigration. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem posted last night she is recommending a full travel ban on every country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies. Those are her words. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt with more on what the administration is doing.
The Trump administration is now actively re-examining all of the Afghans imported into the country by Joe Biden. It is more important than ever to finish carrying out the president's mass deportation operation. America cannot allow millions upon millions of unvetted illegal aliens to be rewarded with amnesty after they broke our nation's laws to come here. We also are taking a look at those who are already in the interior of our country and removing them if they are here illegally, and also taking a look at these visas. Again, having a visa in the United States is not a right, it is a privilege.
Republican Congresswoman Cammack will be in focus. Let's begin with senior foreign policy correspondent Gillian Turner at the State Department. Gillian.
Good morning to you, Harris. The State Department and DHS are now introducing and promoting this new agenda. They are calling it Remigration, and it's meant to essentially stop mass migration from the so-called third world countries to the West. Trump officials now say, as you mentioned a moment ago, they actually want America's closest allies around the world, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, to follow their lead and do the same thing. Take a look at this post on X out of Homeland Security and the State Department. They write, the stakes have never been higher and the goal has never been more clear. Remigration now. Karoline Leavitt says the murder of a service member 2 blocks from the White House is prompting this agenda. It's something the president has been talking about, though, for months. Here he is at the UN.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the #1 political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders.
So we have obtained a cable sent by the State Department to all of the diplomatic corps around the world that instructs them to help support and further the president's aims on ending mass migration. They tell diplomats that they must, #1, raise U.S. concerns about violent crimes associated with people of a migration background and any related human rights abuses, because these events are widespread disruptors of social cohesion and public safety. Diplomats must also report crime linked to immigrants to State Department headquarters, as well as analysis of how host governments handle these issues, including policies that unduly favor migrants at the expense of local populations. Here's a quick look at the 19 countries that the Trump administration has already ended immigration from, full stop. It's a list the White House says they are now looking to expand. And as we heard Karoline Leavitt say at the podium yesterday, Harris, refugee admissions into the country, except for a small handful of folks from South Africa, is essentially at a standstill. These are major systemic overhauls that are now underway. Harris?
All right. Thank you for that great reporting, as always, Gillian. I want to bring in now Republican Congresswoman Cammack of the great state of Florida. Congresswoman, millions of people are in this country, and they've come in different ways, some illegally, no vetting at all. Others went through that parole and asylum system under Biden with insufficient vetting. What is the president trying to do at this point?
Well, good to see you, Harris. And it's pretty staggering when you take a step back and you realize that today, 1 in 6 people here in the United States is foreign born. 1 in 6. That, quite frankly, is not sustainable to maintain a culture that we are known for here in the United States. When you have people who, instead of assimilating into our culture, are opting to basically import their culture, many cases that culture is one of fraud and schemes and scams and violence, you erode the underfoot of what America is all about. And so in the last 4 years, we've watched as the open borders poured 10 million that we know were paroled into the United States, and then millions more that we don't know about or where they are. That is why the president has to take this action, and he has full presidential authority to do so. Every president, in fact, whether they Republican or Democrat, since the 1980s, has used Section 212F of the Immigration and Naturalization Act. So I think that this is an important step in ensuring the closed borders at the moment, but most importantly, national security and safe communities.
You know, I haven't asked anybody this question, but as you're giving out these details, and we're putting up that 1 in 6 people in the U.S. foreign-born on the screen right now, it is a dynamic reminder of where we are. But how did we get here to the point where we had so many people coming in, not just the last 4 years, but under other presidents too? Didn't anybody see this coming other than Trump?
Well, a couple of different things, right? So people used to say that they were coming to the United States not for our IQ, but our CQ, our creative quotient, the ability that Americans inherently have to solve problems. We're innovators, we're problem solvers. Well, instead of people coming and saying, we're going to be a part of this, it kind of drifted into, okay, less opportunity, more of a payout. And we're seeing that play out in states all across America. Look no further than Minnesota and the disaster that's unfolding there, where the Somalian community has been really the root of all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that we've seen in the last several years. That culture of we want equal outcome, and we're looking for a handout rather than a hand up, rather than equal opportunity. That is really what is underpinning all of this fraud and this mass migration, where people say, well, if you go to America, you'll get free everything. Free, your light bill will be taken care of, your rent will be taken care of, your food will be taken care of, but it's all done on the backs of the American taxpayer. And that's where you're seeing this rub. We have to decide as a nation, are we about equal opportunity, or are we about equal outcome? That's what the fight is really about at the end of the day.
That first example you gave is an excellent one. I was a journalist on the ground in Minneapolis, returned to that market years later, and those 12 ISIS trials, those people at the heart of that, they were teenagers at the time, were part of that migration situation that they were really struggling with there. All right, we'll move here. One outlet points to the procedures listed on government websites, that asylum seekers are required to undergo extensive vetting and screenings even after being in the country for several years. The headline reads, Suspected National Guard Shooter Reveals Deeper Problems with Asylum Seeker Vetting. An immigration enforcement advocacy group president told the Washington Examiner, quote, blaming radicalization after Biden let him in isn't a defense, it's the indictment. It proves we never should have opened the door. Trump never promised to accept imported threats and play eternal whack-a-mole with better vetting, yearly check-ins, or special immigrant visas. Your response?
Well, Harris, you've heard me say it before. It was never a matter of if, but when an attack or something tragic happens here in the United States as a result of the failed withdrawal out of Afghanistan, that entire botched operation, and then the unvetting that occurred, right? Well, of course, we have those that have come across the border. We know that there are known terrorists that are in the United States now establishing cells. It was not a matter of if, but when. That's the first part. Second part is when I was overseas spending Christmas with the troops in the Middle East, I was visiting some of the quote unquote lily pads where they were vetting, pre-vetting individuals. They couldn't answer basic questions, but I got the sense from people on the ground that they were more interested in checking boxes and pushing paperwork than actually doing the vetting. In cases here in the United States, we had reports that there were individuals, Afghan nationals, that were sent here, and they were simply walking off of military bases because there was no SOP put in place. So there is a failure of a culture in government that they're more interested in checking boxes and pushing paper than they are actually doing the job and saying no and being the bad guy. That is what has to change.
Well, and I love that you used SOP, standard operating procedure, because that's what I think the president's trying to do on immigration right now.
Yes,
he's going to reset some things. Good to see you. Thank you very much for being in focus.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.